my dear students, earlier when the new element was discovered, it would be named after the discoverer. Elements which is given in green, which are called as metalloids. Homoatomic molecule. Chlorine molecule contains 2 chlorine atoms. Adjacent molecules. Adjacent anta helidre pakkadalliro molecule. Okay, you need to remember this. It's very, very important. So that's about isoelectronic species and the variation of ionic size. My dear students, welcome back to the second session on the chapter Classification of Elements and Periodicity in Properties. Last class we had learnt about genesis of periodic classification. Also we learnt about the link between the electronic configuration and the periodic table, as well as we learnt the classification of periodic table into different blocks, that is S, P, D and F block. Isn't it? So today we will be learning about nomenclature of elements with atomic number greater than 100. There is a set of rules which was given by IUPAC to name the elements above the atomic number 100. Why this has come into practice? That is because earlier when the new element was discovered, it would be named after the discoverer. But this led to a lot of controversies as well. Why did this happen? What was the controversy? See, to prepare an element or synthesize an element above the atomic number 100 is really difficult and requires a lot of sophisticated instruments which is found in only few laboratories in the world. So before the discovery or before getting all the properties, very clearly, some of the scientists wanted to take the credit for the discovery of the element. For example, atomic number 104. Okay, the element with atomic number 104. The American scientist wanted the credit, as well as the Soviet scientist also wanted the credit. And the American scientist named it as Rutherfordium, and the Soviet scientist wanted to name it as Kurchatovium. But then, who exactly had all the properties studied, all the reliable data about that element? Only it was named after them. So, just to avoid such controversies, IUPAC has given a set of rules to name the elements according to their atomic number, or the name of the element is derived from the atomic number itself. And then once all the information, data and all the work is done for that particular element, the IUPAC will itself recognize the name and give the trivial name for that element and the symbol. Okay, so we'll see how exactly we are going to name the elements with atomic number above 100. Okay, so the roots come from here. If it is 0, the name will be nil and abbreviation is small letter n. If it is 1, it is un, un and u. If the digit is 2, it is bi and b. If the digit is 3, it is tri and t. If digit is 4, it is quad and q. Digit is 5, it's pent and p. Digit is 6, it is hex and h. If the digit is 7, sept and s. 8, oct and o. 9, n and e. Okay. So for example, if the atomic number is 101. If the digit is 1, it is un. So I write it as un. Okay. 0, it is nil. So I write it as nil. And 1, it is again un. And the name should end with IUM. So I will add an IUM. So this is the name of the element with atomic number 101. Un, nil, un, em. Okay. So this way we can name it like this. You can see for 102 it is un, nil, bium. 103 it is unyl trium. So it can go on like this. For example, if it is 112, it is un because 2, 1 and 1 we have, and 2 is bi, end it with IUM. Okay. Similarly, we have 113 which is un trium, 114 which is un quadrium, etc. Okay. And the 3 letters, you have to take the symbol which I told, single letter. For un it is U, nil it is N, pentium it is P. So similarly, we can give a 3-letter symbol also along with the name. And these are the official names of some of the elements. The other elements, still the official names is not given. Okay. You can see 101 official name is Mendelevium, 102 it is Nobelium, 103 is Laurentium, and then you have 104 where it is Rutherfordium, 105 Dubnium. So it will go on, which is again named after the scientist itself. Okay. So that is about the nomenclature of the elements with atomic number above 100, and it's a very important 1-mark question. They can give you any number and they can ask you to write the name. Okay. Next one is about metals, non-metals and metalloids. So in the periodic table, if you observe, okay, metal comprises more than 78% of all known elements, and as we move from left to right, okay, you can see on the left side you have maximum, left as well as the center you have all metals here, you can see here, okay, except hydrogen there, rest all are metals. Then towards the right side or towards the end here, you can see there are all non-metals, you can see, and in between the metals and non-metals you can see there are some elements which is given in green which are called as metalloids. Okay, that is boron, silicon, germanium, okay, all these which is given in green, they are metalloids, okay, or they are semi-metals. They constitute some borderline elements, silicon, gallium, germanium, arsenic, tellurium, etc. They show properties of both metals as well as non-metals. Okay, so I hope you have understood how are metals, non-metals and metalloids distributed in our periodic table. Okay, next what we have is periodic trends in properties of elements. So what is a trend which you can observe in the periodic table? Okay, first we are going to all the physical properties. First we have is atomic radius. What do you mean by atomic radius? Atomic radius is defined as distance from the center of the nucleus of the atom to the outermost shell of the electron. For example, if I take, this is the nucleus, okay, and then I have 2 shells. For example, let me take it as lithium, 1s2, 2s1. 2 electrons are there in the first shell and there is 1 electron in the second shell, correct, no? Now what is the atomic radius? It is the distance from the center of the nucleus to the outermost shell. But atom is really very small and it is very difficult to get the atomic radius like this directly. So how can we measure? It is measured in terms, or it is expressed in terms of covalent radius, metallic radius and van der Waals radius. So we will see what each one of them mean, okay. First we have is covalent radius. In homoatomic molecules. What do you mean by homoatomic molecules? It is the molecule which is formed of the same atom. Same atom is forming the molecule. For example, chlorine if you take, it is homoatomic molecule. Chlorine molecule contains 2 chlorine atoms. Oxygen molecule contains 2 oxygen atoms. Hydrogen gas molecule contains 2 hydrogen atoms. Okay, that is the meaning of homoatomic molecules. So in homoatomic molecules, Covalent radius may be defined as 1/2 of the distance between the centers of the nuclei of the similar atom. That is, for example, this is the nucleus of chlorine, this is the nucleus of another chlorine atom. The distance between them is this. So 1/2 of the distance, that is, if I take half of this, that distance is called as the covalent radius. So it is 1/2 of the distance between the nucleus of the same atom bonded with a single bond. For example, bond length between the two chlorine atoms in a molecule of chlorine is 198 picometer and the covalent radius is 99. Now what is this bond length? Bond length is the distance between the two nuclei. We call it as bond length. Half of the bond length is the radius of that atom. Is it clear? That is how you calculate the radius of an atom. There is a formula also, that is covalent radius is equal to internuclear distance in bonded atom divided by 2. That is internuclear distance divided by 2, half of it. So it is divided by 2. You will get the covalent radius. Now next is, what is metallic radius? Metallic radius, it is defined as half of the distance between the centers of the nuclei of the two adjacent atoms in the metallic crystals. Now for example, I have taken here sodium. The two sodium atoms are adjacent to one another in the metallic crystal. So the distance between the two nucleus I have to take, and the half of that is called as the metallic radius. Okay, it is half of the distance between the nucleus of the adjacent atoms. Okay, adjacent atoms in the metallic crystal. Same way here we have given an example with copper. In solid copper, the distance between the two adjacent copper atoms was 256 picometer and the metallic radius is half of it, which is 128 picometer. So I hope you have understood about covalent radius and metallic radius. Next one is van der Waals radius. Now what do you mean by van der Waals radius? It is 1/2 of the distance between the nuclei of the two adjacent identical atoms of neighboring molecules. Okay, now you have, this is one molecule, this is my first molecule, this is my second molecule, which is next to one another, or between these two molecules there is van der Waals force of attraction which is there. Okay, I will take the nucleus of one atom. This is the nucleus of one atom, center of the nucleus of the atom in first molecule. This is the center of the nucleus of the atom which is next to this molecule, that is the second molecule. Okay, now the distance between them is what I have shown in red here. The half of that distance is called as van der Waals radius. Okay, so what is van der Waals radius? It is 1/2 of the distance between the nuclei of the identical atoms in the neighboring molecules. So these two molecules are neighbors, these two are the atoms which is identical, and 1/2 of the distance between the two nuclei we call it as van der Waals radius. Now this, if I take this and this, okay, if I take, that is the internuclear distance, half of that is covalent radius. Okay, this also is internuclear distance, but not of the same molecule. It is between the two adjacent molecules. Adjacent anta helidre pakkadalliro molecule. Okay, so that is van der Waals radius. So I hope you have understood about covalent radius, metallic radius and van der Waals radius. Okay, next what do we have? We have the variation of the atomic radii in the periodic table. Now we understood what do you mean by atomic radii. It can be measured in three terms: covalent radii, metallic, or it can be an van der Waals radius. Correct? So now what is it? how is this atomic radii varying in my periodic table. So along the period what is happening, down the group what is happening, we have to learn. Okay, so first thing is down the group. So I have 18 groups. As I am coming down each group, what is happening to the atomic radius? ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ, ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? Whether it is increasing or decreasing, I need to know. So here, as we come down the group, what happens? Number of electronic shell increases. That is, as I am coming down, if you observe here, lithium I have, below that sodium, then I have potassium. So lithium has first 2 shells, sodium has 1, 2, 3 shells, potassium has 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I am coming down, the electronic shells is going on increasing. The number of electronic shells is what? Is increasing. Correct? You can observe here. Correct? No. So what happens as the number of shells is increasing? You can also observe valence electrons held less strongly to the nucleus. So as we are coming down the group, what is happening? Electronic shells are going on increasing. Also what happens is, here you can see I have 3 electrons, 2 in the first shell, in the second shell I have 1. Correct? Then 2, 8 and 1. So in the first shell I have 2, in the second shell I have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And third shell I have 1. Okay. Similarly, as we are coming down, you can see the number. Here we have 2, 8, 8 and 1. Okay. What happens is, as the electronic shells is increasing, even the number of electrons is increasing. And it is going far away from the nucleus if you observe. Correct, no? If this is the nucleus and it is going far away from the nucleus. So the outermost electron are not very strongly attracted towards the nucleus compared to the ones which is there just next to shell. Correct, no? These are very strongly attracted. These little lesser. Correct? And the outermost one will be the least strongly attracted one towards the nucleus, because of which what happens is the atomic radius will be larger. Okay, so as we come down the group, as the number of electronic shells is increasing, the valence electron are held less strongly towards the nucleus, atomic radius increases, size of the atom increases. Okay, you can observe this also with this values and the graph. Okay, I shall directly explain with the graph because these values are already over there in the graph. So here if you see, I have atomic radius in the y-axis and atomic number in the x-axis. Okay, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium we have. See, it is 152, 186 picometer, 231, 244, 262. So as we go down the group, you can see the values are going on increasing, isn't it? That's why you have got a graph that way. If you see for halogens, you see fluorine is 72, then we have chlorine, bromine, iodine. So as we go down the group, again what is happening? The atomic radius or the size of the atom is going on increasing. Why exactly? Because the number of electronic shells is increasing and the force of attraction between the last valence electron and the nucleus is really less. Okay, so that is the reasons why down the group atomic radius increases. Next, along the period what will happen to atomic radius? Along the period, that is from left to right when I move. Okay, I'll take the example of the second period, that is lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. Okay, I have these in my second period. So in the second period, if you see the atomic radius, if you observe 150 picometer, 112, 98, 77, 75, 73, 71. So what is happening? You can see there is a reduction in the atomic radius. Correct, no? The values are going on reducing. Why exactly it is happening? See, here we have the electronic configuration 1s2, 2s1, then I have 1s2, 2s2. Here I have 1s2, 2s2, 2p1. So after this, if you see, to the same shell it is adding, the second shell only it is going on adding. Here for the second shell 1 electron is added. Here to the second shell 2 electrons are added, you can see 1 and 2. Then 1, 2, 3 is added, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 7. Okay, so the electrons are adding to the same shell. Thus what will happen? Now they are not moved far apart. As the electrons are adding, even the number of protons is going on increasing in the nucleus, and the distance between the nucleus and the shell is the same. So what happens when the electrons are added and even if the number of protons are increasing, they will pull those electrons more strongly towards the nucleus. So when they are pulling it very strongly towards the nucleus, the electron will come closer and the atomic radius will decrease. Is it clear? So what happens? We call it as effective nuclear charge. That is the force of attraction what an electron experiences, okay, towards the nucleus. We call it as effective nuclear charge. So effective nuclear charge on the electron goes on increasing as we move along the period, and you can observe in the graph also. So here you can see for lithium the atomic radius is here, then we have for beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. So you can see it is reducing, it's coming down in the graph. So what is happening? Atomic radius is going on decreasing along the period. So what happens? Down the group atomic radius increases, along the period atomic radius decreases. Okay, you need to remember this. It's very, very important. Fine. Next we have about ionic radius. So atomic radius, what I learnt? It is expressed in three ways, that is it can be covalent radius or metallic radius or van der Waals radius. Now new type it is coming which is called as ionic radius. Okay, so what is ionic radius? Ionic radius may be defined as the effective distance from the nucleus to the ions to the point up to which it has influence on the electron cloud. So what is it? It is the distance from the nucleus up to where the nucleus has its effect on the electron cloud. Electron cloud means it may not be the outermost shell, up to where it can pull the electron towards itself. The outermost electron cloud, up to that distance we call it as ionic radius. Okay. The removal of electron from an atom results in formation of cation. Addition of an electron to an atom results in formation of anion. Now for example, from sodium, if I remove an electron, I will get sodium ion, that is a cation. From fluorine, if I add an electron, I will get fluoride ion, that is an anion. Correct, no? So if we remove an electron, we get cation. If I add an electron, I get an anion. Now when we are doing this, what happens to the radius we will see. Okay, so here sodium atom has 186 picometer, but sodium cation has 95 picometer. What happened here? It decreased. So the cation is always smaller than its parent atom. Correct, no? So the size of the cation is smaller compared to that of the parent atom. Similarly, if you see fluorine here, for fluorine atom it is 64 picometer. But after it is taken an electron, it becomes fluoride ion, an anion, isn't it? Here you can see 136 picometer. Almost double. Correct, no? So what happened here? When the electron was added to fluorine, when it became an anion, the ionic radius increased. Okay, so the size of anion is always larger compared to that of the parent atom. So always remember, when I remove an electron, what happens is the electron cloud will shrink and the cation will be smaller. Okay, when I add an electron to an atom, it becomes an anion. That means the electron cloud will bulge or it will become larger. Why exactly? See, the number of protons are same. So when I am removing an electron, the number of protons in the nucleus is same, but the number of electrons are less. So what electrons are there, those electrons only will be pulled even better. They are experiencing more effective nuclear charge, thus the electron cloud will shrink. Now in anion what will happen? The number of protons are same, you are adding one more extra electron. The load on the protons is more because you are expecting now the extra electron also will be attracted towards the nucleus, and because of this what will happen is the atomic radius will increase because all of the electrons will experience a little less effective nuclear charge. Okay, so I hope you have understood about this. Next we will see about isoelectronic species. Very, very important concept. Now what is isoelectronic species? The atom or ions having the same number of electrons but different magnitude of nuclear charge is called as isoelectronic species. Here you can see oxygen with 2 electrons extra, that is oxide ion. Number of electrons are 10, that is 8 electrons it's already having, atomic number is 8, correct? Plus 2 extra electron, it became 10. Fluorine has got 9 electrons, one more extra electron, that is 10. Sodium had 11 electrons, it has lost an electron, that's why positive charge, but the number of electrons remaining are 10. Magnesium has 12 electrons, it has lost 2 electrons, thus what is there is 10. So all of these ions, what is common? The number of electrons are common. But if you observe the atomic number, for oxygen it is 8, for fluorine it is 9, for sodium is 11, for magnesium it is 12. So their magnitude of nuclear charge is different, but the number of electrons are same. Such species are called as isoelectronic species. So what should be equal? The number of electrons in such atoms or ions should be equal. Now what about the variation of ionic size in isoelectronic species? So what you can observe, or how can you arrange this? All of them have same number of electron, but you can tell the biggest one is the one with highest negative charge and the smallest one is with the highest positive charge. I told you cation size is smaller, anion size is larger. So I can tell that oxide is the largest because it has got 2 extra electrons, whereas fluorine is a little smaller than oxide. Sodium ion is much lesser. Magnesium has the least ionic radius because it has lost 2 electrons and the electron cloud would have shrunk much. Okay. So as the nuclear charge increases, the electrons are held more strongly by the nucleus, hence effective nuclear charge. I already explained what it is. Effective nuclear charge increases and the ionic radius decreases. Okay. So as the positive charge goes on increasing, then the effective nuclear charge experienced by these electrons will become more and the electron cloud will be shrinking and the atomic radius is lesser or ionic radius is lesser. Okay. So that's about isoelectronic species and the variation of ionic size. Next is ionization enthalpy. What do you mean by ionization enthalpy? For example, in this particular element, which is this element, count the number of electrons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 electrons are there. Okay, so it may be magnesium, isn't it? Now, the energy required to remove the outermost electron, for example, this is the outermost electron or the valence electron in the valence shell. Valence electron means outermost electron in the last shell. The last shell is called as what? Valence shell. Okay, so the valence electron, if I remove that, to remove it I need some energy because these electrons are what? pull towards the nucleus. All these electrons are experiencing a pull towards the nucleus. What is it called as? Effective nuclear charge, isn't it? So all of these electrons are having an attraction towards the nucleus. So to remove the electron, I will require some amount of energy, and that energy is called as ionization energy. If I tell ionization energy is less, that means less energy is required to remove the electron. Electrons are lost very easily. If the ionization energy is very more, or ionization enthalpy is very high, that means it is very difficult for me to remove this electron. Is it clear? What do you mean by ionization enthalpy? It is defined as the amount of energy required to remove the outermost electron from an isolated gaseous atom. What is it? It is the amount of energy required to remove the outermost electron from an isolated gaseous atom. Now for example, X is the gaseous atom which I have got. Okay, I remove one electron. One electron I remove, it became a cation with one positive charge. This energy is called as first ionization enthalpy, IE1 I have put. That means it's the first ionization enthalpy. Next, same cation I will take and remove one more electron. So this will become +2. One more electron I have removed. So when I remove the second electron from the same atom, okay, then it is called as second ionization enthalpy. From this cation with +2 charge, I will remove one more electron, and that is called as third ionization enthalpy. Okay. Thus, the successive ionization energy vary in the following. That is, the third ionization enthalpy is larger, second ionization enthalpy is a little lesser, first ionization enthalpy will be the least. This is usually which we observe. So it is easy to remove the first electron, a little difficult to remove the second electron, and most difficult to remove the third electron is what this means. Okay. This is because removal of electron from cation requires more energy due to increased effective nuclear charge. So what happens is, first electron when I removed, I got a cation. Cation, what happens? I told you the electron cloud will shrink. Now each electron is experiencing what? More effective nuclear charge. More and more it is pulled towards the nucleus. So what will happen? To remove the second electron from this, I require even more amount of energy, because it is pulled very strongly towards the nucleus, because the number of protons are same. Okay, so the third ionization enthalpy will be even more higher, because already 2 electrons are missing, the number of protons are same, so the remaining electrons are nicely pulled towards the nucleus, isn't it? So the third ionization enthalpy will be even higher. Okay, so we will see what is the variation of ionization enthalpy. First is across the period or along the period. Okay, what will happen? Along the period, ionization enthalpy increases. Why? I told you along the period what is happening? Atomic radius is going on reducing. So when it is smaller and smaller, very close to the nucleus, nicely it is pulled towards the nucleus, and it is very difficult for me to remove the electron. More energy I require. Correct? No, because as we move along the period, atomic radius is going on reducing. We will require more and more energy. Thus, ionization enthalpy will increase along the period or across the period. By reasons they have given: increase in nuclear charge, the number of protons is increasing, but the number of shells or the distance between the nucleus and the shell is the same. The electrons added to the same shell, so decrease in atomic size is there, and the addition of electrons in the same energy level is happening, because of which the ionization enthalpy will be more when we move across the period. Okay, here you can observe hydrogen and helium. Helium is much more. Lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. Here you have a little variation. I'll talk about this variation. There is some exceptional cases here. I'll explain what it is. But you see the third period, you have sodium, magnesium, then you have aluminium, silicon, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon, etc. So along the period what should happen? The ionization enthalpy should be more, it should increase. Okay. Now I told you there are some exceptions, no? What are those exceptions? We'll see here. Ionization enthalpy among the elements of the second period. Now in the second period, what is happening? Now you will understand this observing this graph. You see in the second period we have lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine and neon. Correct? But is the graph going on in the straight line? No. According to us, along the period what should happen? It should going on increasing. Ionization enthalpy should increase, isn't it? So it should have been a straight line like this, lithium in the end over here and neon above, and the others should have been in center. But it is not happening that way. What you can see here is for lithium, okay, atomic number 3, for lithium it is 520 kilojoule per mole energy was required to remove the electron. Then beryllium a little higher, okay, but then beryllium and boron, if you see, boron is lesser than beryllium. Beryllium it is 899, for boron it is 801. Why is this? That is, you can understand by looking into their electronic configuration. See, for beryllium, electronic configuration is 1s2, 2s2. For boron, it is 1s2, 2s2, 2p1. Here, we call it as electronic configuration of beryllium is symmetrical than that of boron. Or, I can tell that here it is completely filled orbital. S orbital is completely filled. Okay, and it is more tightly attracted towards the nucleus. Okay, here one extra electron comes in the p orbital of the second shell, so it is held less tightly by the nucleus of boron, and then 2s electrons of beryllium has shielding effect of 2p electrons of boron. What happened here is these two electrons will shield the next electron which is coming towards the nucleus. For example, this is the nucleus, okay, here is my first shell, second shell I have 2 electrons, in the same second shell I have one more which is coming, and the previous shell there is shielding anta helidre cover marta idare, or there is something which is covering the other new electron which is coming, and the attraction will not be direct, there is something which is shielding. So shielding effect also will be observed, because of which what happens, the size also will be a little varied, or this electron can be removed very easily. And one more thing, if this electron is removed, it gets a completely filled configuration and its stability also will increase. Always remember, any element which has got completely filled orbital or completely half filled orbital, especially when it is p orbital, it is more stable. More again I will explain. After boron, you see again there is an increase, boron, carbon and nitrogen, it is increasing. Again from nitrogen to oxygen there is a decrease. Nitrogen it is 1402 and oxygen it is 1314 kilojoule per mole. So why nitrogen has a higher ionization enthalpy than that of oxygen? We will understand that by looking into the electronic configuration again. See, nitrogen it is 1s2, 2s2, 2p3, whereas oxygen it is 1s2, 2s2, 2p4. Idralena difference irodu? See, in nitrogen it is 2p3. So p orbital, if you see 1, 2, 3, this is 2p orbital of nitrogen. Completely half filled. Extra stability it has got. Okay, that is the reason nitrogen has got higher ionization enthalpy compared to that of oxygen. Oxygen, what will happen? There is one more electron which will come here. Okay, and that extra stability is gone. That is the reason nitrogen has higher ionization enthalpy than that of oxygen. Then from oxygen again it will go on increasing, is what you can observe. Okay. So again, increase in ionization enthalpy from lithium to beryllium due to the increase in nuclear charge and the smaller atomic size. But there is a decrease from beryllium to boron because beryllium is more symmetrical than boron. Okay, and also there is one extra electron which is coming here, which will make it unsymmetrical. Also here it has got extra stability because of the completely filled orbitals. Next, again you can see from boron, carbon to nitrogen it is increasing. From nitrogen to oxygen there is a decrease. Why? Due to the half-filled 2p orbitals of nitrogen, which gives the extra stability for nitrogen. It becomes difficult for us to remove the electron from nitrogen. After that it is regularly increasing. Okay, so this is about the ionization enthalpy among the second period. Okay, next is variation in the group. So what happens as we come down the group? As we come down the group, the ionization enthalpy decreases. So as we come down the group, the atomic size is bigger and the effective nuclear charge is less, because of which the electrons can be removed very easily. Here you can see lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium. It is coming down, that is it is becoming lesser and lesser. You can see the value 520, 496, 419, 403 and 374 kilojoule per mole energy is required. Okay, next we have is variation of ionization enthalpy among the elements up to atomic number 60. Now in this graph, if you observe, the maxima of the graphs, you can see the point, the highest point, it is all noble gases: helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon. Whereas minima of the graph, that is the lowest point, you can see it is lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium. Why you can observe this? See, the noble gases all have completely filled orbitals. Okay, they all are completely filled orbitals and they have got extra stability. Whereas all of these, if you observe, what is happening is they all have one extra electron in the shell, in the valence shell. If that extra electron can be removed very easily. Okay, and because of the size also, again those electrons can be lost very easily, and thus they have the lowest ionization enthalpy. Okay. So that is the variation which you can see up to atomic number 60 for ionization enthalpy. So next class we will be learning all of these, that is electronegativity, electron gain enthalpy, periodic trends in chemical properties, anomalous properties of second period element, as well as diagonal relationship. So I hope you have understood today's class. It's a really very important class because it is very important for you to understand all of these terminologies. It's the basics what is there for you all for your second PU inorganic chemistry as well as the first PU inorganic chemistry, and lot of understandings, like for example if I use the word atomic radius, ionization enthalpy, you need to recollect what it is. Okay, so it's a very important class. Wherever required, make a note of all the points and study well. Okay, see you next class. Thank you my dear children. Stay curious, stay focused.